So how I defined a great relationship for me is a romantic team. The second law of thermodynamics about entropy, and basically it says that everything's naturally getting more disorderly. Well, that is how relationships are. We cannot come to a relationship with our love tank being empty. If you're single, it's a great time to have clarity, because with clarity is power. I think a lot of us could easily, this is the entropy I'm talking about, and the naturally getting worse over time, it can be easy to have a relationship turn into an arrangement rather than a relationship. Are you interested in improving your relationship? Or are you single and wanting to be in a relationship? Well, then this podcast is for you. Do you guys remember in science class the second law of thermodynamics about entropy? And basically it says that everything's naturally getting more disorderly. Well, that is how relationships are. If you're not working on them, they'll naturally get worse. And I think that's very interesting. So let's just talk about how do we uplevel our relationships and how do we have great relationships? The first thing to talk about is that God created relationships, and we really need to know each other, enjoy, and be able to create a relationship. And I remember thinking a long time ago, it's like God designed marriage, and marriage is good, but I was in a destructive relationship for 22 years, and it was not good for me. And so I had a really hard time understanding this whole thing. And now I've been married for over 2 years, and gosh, I can just see how good it can be. And I just am so grateful for that. But how do we have a great relationship? Well, I'm going to talk about 4 things. The first thing is we have to start by up-level our thinking. And I think this is really interesting when it comes to destructive relationships, because I had a hard time seeing and understanding its destructiveness. Like my body could tell, my emotions could tell, but I had a hard time understanding that. And I talk about that a lot in the first 8 episodes of Live Brighter with Tara. And I really had to have the humility, and not just because I'm generally a pretty teachable person, and that actually was not beneficial in this relationship, but I had to be humble about my beliefs and things that I just was very concrete about as far as marriage and God and women and how we should just be in this relationship. And I had to really humble myself and ask God for, my eyes to be opened and to see things differently. And as soon as I did, he started teaching me differently. And he can do that for all of us. So really just going to God, and not with our ideas of God, but really like, God, reveal yourself, reveal your understanding to us. And I think that is huge as far as up-leveling our thinking. I think of this cartoon, I don't know, if you guys remember the Bugs Bunny and Tweety show? Well, the best way to describe how I felt in this destructive relationship was there's a Bugs Bunny and Daffy part and it's called I Will Name Him George. So you can look that up on YouTube, and it's pretty short, but it's pretty funny in this context. And basically it's about this abdominal snowman that thinks he found a rabbit, and he's so excited. I've always wanted a rabbit. I will name him George, and I will love him and squeeze him. And the whole time it's actually Daffy Duck, and he's got his shirt on where his sleeves are looking like he's a rabbit. And he's like, I'm not a rabbit. And he's being loved and squeezed, and Daffy's not liking this a lick. And he keeps trying to convince the abdominal snowman that he is not a rabbit. And once he convinces him he's not a rabbit, then the abdominal snowman is, you're not a rabbit? I will punish you for da-da-da-da. And it's really funny. But that is how I felt. I felt like I was not seen, that I was assumed I was a rabbit, and I wasn't. And as much as I could communicate that, it was not working. So I think that's kind of a funny way to look at it. But how should a relationship be? Well, you should be able to both see each other, and it should be benefiting both of you, which is a very interesting thing. But we actually get this from God. He has this verse, and it says, I look at this verse differently, but this is what it says. It says, 2 are better than 1 because they have good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help them up. If 2 lie down, they will keep warm. And though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. So you just see that mutual support, comfort, protection, and that's why I talk about equal love and respect. So how I defined a great relationship for me is a romantic team. And that is what I've created with my husband, Mike, and I love it. Do you feel stuck in an area? Are you avoiding making some decisions? You're not alone. That's why I want to invite you to Coffee Chat. We're meeting October 19th in the morning, and I'd love for you to join. It's just a small group of women that we can empower, learn, and have some fun. I'll see you there. So that's the first thing. If we're going to uplevel our relationships, we have to uplevel our thinking, whether that takes us to have some, humility and understanding with God, or just to uplevel our thinking in lots of different ways. The second one is we have to uplevel our love. And this is a really interesting concept because we cannot come to a relationship with our love tank being empty. What that means is if we have beliefs where I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, and we're seeking for that other person to kind of make the half the whole, then that doesn't work well. We really have to know that we're enough and lovable and not rely on the other person to constantly be dumping into that tank and having it be like a sieve where it's just leaking out. And how we uplevel our love, or how we uplevel that, is what I talk a lot about on this podcast, which is really embracing God's love for us. God designed us unique, special, with exactly us in mind, with gifts, talents, a plan, a purpose, and He sees you as His amazing child. And really embracing that we are lovable, and that we're enough, and it's not based on what we have done or what we haven't done. It's just we're enough because we're created by God and He adores us, or created and organized in universe, however you want to say it. But you can see that there is a plan and a purpose, and that's what we embrace for being enough and lovable. And when we embrace that, we have so much more to add to relationships. So upleveling our love of God, and when we understand that, then we can love ourselves in a different way. We can just love that we're, unique, we quirky, all of us have our uniqueness, and that we can just love and take care of that, and upleveling all of that. So again, uplevel our thinking in general, upleveling our love is the second. The third one is you have to know yourself. I think this is really interesting because, I had put myself aside for so many years that I kind of lost sight of what I wanted, what made me happy. And I actually just met a gal for dinner the other night, and she's like, I totally lost myself in the relationship. I totally lost myself. And I think that can happen if you're ever losing yourself. That should be a red flag, because that's not mutual love and respect. But we have to know ourselves. What do we want? What don't we want? What ticks us off? What makes us happy? What thrills us? What are our pain points? All of those things, like to really know ourselves, and to rather thinking that there's something wrong with us, that really just like that is who we are. Like this is who we are at this point, and just understanding that. And it's not saying, oh yeah, I have this pet peeve and it can never change or anything like that. But it's really just a basic understanding of who we are and embracing that we're all unique and have different things. I went hiking with a friend, and she was telling me how, she had met this guy and everybody loved her, but in her heart, she could just tell he wasn't a good fit. And she's like, what is wrong with me? He has this, he has that, but I just don't feel it. I'm like, why don't you say what's right with you? And maybe you need more support around you, because I think you have great intuition that you were able to see those things that they weren't. And so it's really about what's right with you, and who are you, and what really lights you up in a relationship, and what is just not for you. That's super important. And then the fourth thing is knowing how to make additions to the tank of the relationship and to your own tank, and to limit subtractions. And that can go to ourselves as an individual, because honestly, if we come to a relationship with an empty tank, it's a lot harder than when we have a fuller tank. But I really think about this as the tank of our relationship. So that's the context I'm going to talk about this. So making additions to that love tank and limit subtractions. So I would say that making additions are just those kind, thoughtful things, the knowing of the other person that you can add to the relationship. So for example, we're all so different as far as what we love, and not only do we have to know that, but we do have to communicate that, because others are not brain readers. But for me, like, quality time is very important to me. But quality time can look different to different people. For me, it's about playing together, but I also have to be able to have like some deep conversations. So someone that's a deep thinker. And the other things that we add to our relationship is like Michael will a lot of times make my coffee in the morning. And then I'll do sweet things for him too. He loves foot rubs, which is absolutely appalling to my daughter, who thinks that feet are the grossest thing in the world. But I don't seem to have that problem. So I don't mind giving him a foot rub, and I actually like helping him. And so those are additions, just the nice things we do, and it's intentional. And we're also very kind as far as how we talk to each other. We're not just assuming things or taking each other for granted. I really believe that we should be treating the people closest to us with the most amount of love, not trying to impress others on the exterior and then leaving the person closest to us, the one lacking, or the ones that we're snapping at, or things like that. I don't think that that's right. I think that's kind of some automatic thing that can happen, but we intentionally not being like that, giving that person the most energy, the most love. And we, every day we start our morning with coffee and read a verse and read our relationship book and do intentional time together. And that is what makes additions to our tank. And everybody is different as far as what makes additions. But then also limiting subtractions. This is a biggie. And I talk about this a lot. Limiting subtraction, I think a lot, is having healthy conflict resolution that benefits both people. And so conflict resolution is its own thing as far as people's systems, where they come from, and then getting together and deciding how do we want to do conflict that works for both of us. And it can be very unique to you or to your relationship, because for Mike and I, we do not resolve conflict at night. So there's this verse that says, don't let the sun go down on your wrath. And some people have taken that literally, and they will not go to bed without resolving conflict. For me, that is a disaster, because the more tired we both are, the worse it gets. So we've decided that we do not resolve conflict at night. And if we do have a conflict, we just assume that we are a loving team and we're going to work it out, and we go to sleep and we get sleep, because that's what works for us. But really having a healthy conflict resolution plan, and literally Mike and I have had those conversations, how can we both resolve conflict and respect each other and work it out. And for us, it's a little different. For him, he needs a little bit more time to, if it's emotionally intense, to cool off. And, that could be a couple hours or a day. So it's not a really long time, not to what I was used to in my previous relationship, where if I brought something up, I'd be ignored for 6 days, and tried to bring it up again, I'd be ignored another 6 days. So I was chronically ignored. And that was the relationship, and conflict was not resolved. And I called it death by 1,000 cuts, because chronically not ever resolving conflict. And that really does not help being seen and heard. But having a relationship plan where we literally said, this is how we can resolve conflict. For us, we actually have Weeding Wednesdays, where we talk about things, and we talk about the little things that we need to weed. And something that we call a weed is something that is still bothering us after a day or two. And it's even if it's something small, we'll call it a weed. It's a small weed, but we got to pluck it out of the garden and keep our relationship garden healthy. And so we have Weeding Wednesdays, because for Mike, that works really well, just to have a day and not have it brought up as it comes. For me, I actually prefer if I've done something that he actually tells me right away. And so it kind of, you guys we get to work together to figure out, well, how can we do healthy conflict resolution where it's pretty quick but reasonable, and both people are benefiting, and we both understand each other's pain points. Because for Mike, he does not want to have it brought up throughout the week, because in his past relationship, he was chronically criticized and things were always brought up. And so having it in a container of our Weeding Wednesdays is much healthier for him. And so just kind of understanding all of those things. So that's how we make additions to our relationships, and we limit the subtractions. And that is really helpful. So again, the 4 things that can help with a relationship is upleveling our thinking, upleveling our love, knowing ourselves, and make additions and limit the subtractions. So go ahead and decide on 1 through 4, what do you want to work on? What is important to you? and focus on that and get some clarity. If you're single, it's a great time to have clarity, because with clarity is power. And I think that's huge. I want to just read one more thing about relationships, because I think a lot of us can easily, this is the entropy I'm talking about, and then naturally getting worse over time. It can be easy to have a relationship turn into an arrangement rather than a relationship. And so I'm going to just take a little bit from my Unravel notebook, the book that I have on Amazon, and talk about the difference between a relationship versus an arrangement. So a relationship is mutual. An arrangement is one-sided. A relationship is a dialogue. An arrangement is a monologue. A relationship has shared needs. An arrangement is selfish needs. A relationship is flexible. An arrangement is rigid. A relationship fills you. An arrangement drains you. A relationship brings joy. An arrangement, you feel used. A relationship brings excitement, and that's a healthy excitement versus adrenaline. And arrangements, you feel bored. A relationship is fully present, and arrangement is absent. A relationship is nurturing, and an arrangement is confining and condemning. And so that's really good to kind of assess our relationships, and we can either work to make them, if it's more of an arrangement, work to make it more into a relationship and go from there. So deciding on 1 through 4 what you want to work on is huge. And I'm always Mike and I are always working on ourselves and our relationship. And that's the beauty of a growth mindset. And that's huge. And if you're single, it is an amazing, amazing time again to get clarity, because clarity is power. If you know what you want and you have clarity on who you are and what works well for you, and you know how to make subtractions, like how to have healthy conflict resolution, and you're intentional about wanting to make additions and knowing that person, it is really amazing on how you can create a beautiful, intentional relationship. So that is my advice to single people and to married people. I think we can always work on upleveling our relationship. So I believe in you, and we can live brighter and make our relationships better 1% at a time. Make it a great day.